All right, another Tim Cain reaction. Psychology in video game design. Hope you guys are having a good day. Let's jump in and talk about psychology.
Hi everyone, it's me, Tim.
Hi, Tim.
Today I want to talk about psychology in video games. Because a good designer thinks about how people think. I think about what you think. And I know what you're thinking right now. And yes, I dress myself. I picked this shirt out myself because it's got popsicles on it.
That's a cool shirt. But yeah, he's true. It's true. Game designer, a lot of our work is about creating those experiences, emotions, and that's what you're thinking is, especially in like story-driven games, is what is the story trying to tell? Have we put a sad quest next to a comedic quest? And maybe is the killing brutally of some young girl maybe not the best thing to put right before a comedic quest about popsicles? You know, maybe is the pacing wrong? Because then the emotions are wrong, and that's psychology, right? Or do we want the player to feel frustrated by this boss? You know, is there too much frustration? Is there not enough friction? These are all, these are all terms that we use. Like friction is a term that we use for careful frustration of the player, but too much friction can mean that you aren't moving at all. And that lack of progress then creates so many negative emotions in the player that they feel like there's no pathway forward. Or maybe you've told them that they have choices that matter, but then you have a lot of choices in the game that don't matter, and so then they feel this disillusionment of what they were sold versus what they're playing. Game design is not a settled science, much like psychology, and it's a very interesting field of game development, but it is also one with a lot of unknowns. And a lot of it does have to do with psychology, and even different target markets for your game can have completely different desires for their game and different wants and needs. You know, if your target audience is 60-year-old grandmas, you don't want to introduce a game that is frustrating because it requires really good response time, right? Because 60-year-old grandmas don't have very good response time usually. All of it matters. All of it's psychology.
Some of you may have missed where I talked about
it's physiology.
the fact that I have a minor in psychology. Weirdly,
I didn't know that.
When I wanted to get computer science at University of Virginia, it's part of the engineering program. And if you pick computer science as your major, they require you to pick a minor. And it says related minor. I would say most of the people I knew in computer science took management information systems as their minor, which was in the business school, which made me realize it could be anywhere. You don't have to pick like electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. You can pick anything you want. So I picked psychology. And the reason for that was
smart choice.
There were no artificial intelligence classes in the computer science department at University of Virginia when I was there in the 80s. The only AI class offered was a graduate program in psychology. So my plan, and I made this plan in my second year.
That's so weird.
My plan was minor in psychology, apply to grad school in my fourth year, hopefully get in early, and then my last semester at UVA, approach whoever's teaching the graduate level AI class and say, hey, I'm going to grad school. I've been minor in psychology. I'm about to get my bachelor's in computer science, and I would love to be in your class, even if I have to audit it. Well, really cool. I did get in early at
That is cool.
University of California, Irvine, and the teacher who was teaching the AI class, the graduate AI class in psychology, actually thought I'd be a good fit. So I didn't just audit it. She let me be in the class, and it was a great class. So I think that's probably one of the most used psychology classes that I took, except maybe abnormal psych, but you kind of gotta be in the game industry to know why abnormal psych was useful. But I digress. I want to talk about how psychology helps when you're doing game design. Now, I know I mentioned, I forget what video it was, I mentioned that inexperienced producers think you can schedule creativity. I mean, they literally go, okay, so you're going to have a new hook for the game next week.
Yes, they do. Oh my god, the number of times. So how many days do you think it'll take you to design the system? I don't fucking know. All we have in the high level design document is we want to have, I don't know, some system. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how to make it fun yet. I, I also had managers who would like see me sitting outside staring at the sky and thinking that I'm not working, and all I'm doing is like designing this system in my head, thinking like, is this fun? Is this fun? Just play it in your head. Is this loop enjoyable? How do we make it more strategic? How do we tie it to the resources of the game? How? And yeah, design work is so, it is creative in a lot of cases, and it's so difficult to know when you're going to have that aha moment or where it's going to come from. You could be talking to a junior artist and have that aha moment because they might have a great idea. You could be watching a movie and be like, "Oh my god, that's it. That's how we do it. That's how we do that system." So it can happen off hours. It can happen in the shower. I mean, who knows? Sometimes you just need to sit, you need to think, you need to come back the next day, you need to come back a week later. You might have a better idea even while designing the system than you had when you were doing like the high level design of the GDD. You never know. So how many shirts is that?
Week, or you're going to have inventory redesigned next week, as if you can go, oh yeah, I'm going to have three brilliant ideas before lunch and then maybe one on my coffee break in the afternoon. I don't know where they think ideas come from.
I'm going to use that,
but they literally make schedules that have you being creative on a timetable.
So here's the problem: is that a lot of game dev works in Scrum, or methodology, like agile methodology, not Scrum. And because of that, you have a milestone, you have a sprint, and they want to know how long a design, what is a designer meant to do in that sprint? Like, let's say design system X, so that in the next sprint, the programmers can implement system X. They want to know how many hours is it going to take, how many story points is it going to be, and it's so hard. I just can't do it. Like, I don't know. Sometimes the simplest things can take the longest time. I mean, how long have we spent thinking about trinkets in Coin Pusher Realms? Now, the good news is we don't need that for like a year and a half of development. I don't really need to have that fully figured out yet. But I've spent so long thinking about it that I don't know. I still don't know. It's still a question mark. But then there are other things like switching realms is more technically demanding, or you would think that it is, and yet I know exactly how I want to achieve it, right? So it's just, I hate agile and estimating shit. Everything is an unknown. Yeah, and I'm not really a big fan of agile's method of estimating things where you have story points, and story points equate to complexity, not time. I agree. That's what spikes are for, right? You're right. That is what spikes are for, and I think that, I don't know. I agree with Tim though. I think that inexperienced producers don't know what a designer does, and so they might see it as being, what's a good word to use here, as dismissive. When a designer says, "I literally cannot tell you how long it's going to take me to design this. Once I know what we want to design, maybe I can tell you how long it'll take me to write the design document for it. But I don't know how long it's going to take to get to the stage where I have notes that I feel comfortable enough bringing to the lead programmer and the lead artist and having a discussion about it." I don't know. To some extent, I think designers should not be included in sprints beyond saying, "Hey, in 2 weeks, we need to have some documentation done for the system." But I agree with Twitch Dog that most of your design should be handled in your pre-production. And then your vertical slice is where you refine that design and document it enough to go into alpha and beta with a very clear understanding of what you need to do. And so therefore, in alpha and beta, a designer is more of a consultant and a problem solver and a balancer, as opposed to writing up documentation all the time. That's what the pre-production is for. That is what vertical slice is for.
I know why they need it.
It should be feature complete.
I've done the same thing, but guess what? You may not be creative on that timetable.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Similarly, I've run into inexperienced designers that think that game design is all about math. They they make spreadsheets that show weapon damage versus.
Tim, oh my god, Tim, don't get me started. Don't get me started on junior designers and their spreadsheets. I have ranted so much about it. I cannot do it again. I won't. Okay, I'll rant a little bit. The number of times I've seen, here's the design for my game, and I get shown a spreadsheet of damage types and formulas for calculating hits. I don't care. It doesn't matter. A formula is not fun. It's a formula, and there is no formula for fun. Stop showing me spreadsheets of your damage before we even have a prototype. I don't want to see it. It doesn't mean anything to me. Where's your prototype? Show me the fun gameplay loop.
Versus damage resistance versus level versus expected player attribute values and skill values and
You're
ranges.
so right.
And that's fine. That's really fine to do. And if you're really going for strict realism in your game, it's probably necessary to
It's needed at a point. It's needed at a point.
do.
But there's only so much design you can do on paper.
Strict realism in your game, it's probably necessary to do.
Yeah.
But it's really more important to think about how your players think.
And feel.
The reason for this is you can make the best design in the world, but if it goes against how players want to play or how they think, it can be bad.
It's true.
I'm going to talk about 3 cases I can think of, and I kind of just put them in the order. One is something I thought of years ago. One is something that happened just a few years ago, but not as far. And then one is something that happened this year. Let's talk about case 1. I was at a conference almost 10 years ago now, where I talked about how I wished I had made the Fallout character creation screen differently. So here's the character.
You're very right. You're very right. Damage will get changed in testing later anyway, and it will be changed by feel or slapping a multiplier. And it's exactly what it is. There's only so much you can do with formulas and paper design and the math behind the scenes. In summary, I think Tim pulls off a Rainbow Ice Pop shirt way better than I could. I 1000% agree with that too. I wish I could look good and stuff like that. The most I can hope for is not looking cringy if I buy a picture of like some cat who's like high on drugs and it says ibuprofen or something on it, okay? I don't think I can pull that off. Sorry, Tim.
A conference almost 10 years ago now, where I talked about how I wished I had made the Fallout character creation screen differently. So here's the character creation screen. The problem I have with this, it is not immediately obvious what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, you create your character at the start of a game, but it's like, well, I don't know how useful something is going to be. Like, okay, I have 30% poison resistance. How common is poison in the game? I don't know what to do with that. This was one of my problems with a game that I've heard is really good called Underrail. But for me, Underrail, it's very similar to Fallout 1, by the way, in the same style of game. I don't know what to pick in Underrail because every time I try to make a character that I would want to play, it does horribly at the start of the game. Because it feels like having, really good strength and, like endurance at the start to escape some, underground place and killing bugs will make it much easier, but then I won't have all the things that I really like to have, like lockpick or sneaking or, being able to, or science to be able to hack into things. And so then I make my character, I spend all this time, I make it perfect, I make it feel good, and I play the game, I get engaged, and then it just throws a wrench in everything that I'm doing because I didn't know that I would need to have melee weapons because they wouldn't give me a gun at the start of the game or something. Well, it's like, okay, do I start over? Do I cheat? Do I just try to push through it? But I'm not having fun because I'm not doing damage because I didn't put any points in strength. I don't know. I get exactly where Tim's going.
Yes, there are buttons, but they're all different. There are buttons, up and down buttons near the attributes, and then there's buttons next to all the traits, and there's buttons over by the skills. And what's weird about them is the attribute buttons make it clear that you can go up and down, but the traits and skills are just selected. And when you get over to the skills, that's when you realize you're not putting any points in skills, you're tagging them
Yeah,
to make them your primary skill. Those would be skills that get an extra bonus at
lack
the
of
beginning of the game.
information.
These are just things you kind of have to know. And since this screen just pops up and it's all right there all at the same time, you just kind of have to know, oh, I got to do all these different things. Now, when I mentioned it, a lot of people said they like this screen because as you're adjusting your attributes, you see your skills change. As you pick different traits, you might see some skills change or your attributes change, so
Those
you
are
can
two
go back
separate
and
things,
forth
though.
to them. And I agree. That's a great thing about this screen. But players, new players especially, it's a little daunting. And even existing players sometimes forget to do things like change their age.
I would say that it's not even something that isn't designed for casuals. It's just not designed for. I mean, this could be somebody's first experience with a like a CRPG like this, right? And if this is their first experience, then there isn't enough onboarding for that new player. So the new player experience is designed around people who are familiar with these systems already, which is okay for those players, but for those who aren't new, you have that issue. Or for those who are new, sorry.
It's really common that people forget to change their name. I think we had a pop-up that kind of prevented you from like, hey, you sure you want to continue with your name
That's
being
pretty standard
name?
nowadays for UX.
What would have been a lot better is you get to the screen and maybe it highlights. You want to pick your name? Now you want to pick your age? Now you want to pick your gender? Hey, now let's pick some attributes. Don't worry, you can come back and change these. Now why don't you pick 2 traits? You don't have to pick any if you don't want, but you can pick up to 2. Now
I'm gonna be honest though, I don't know why a lot of games don't allow you to change your name after the fact. I mean, there's so many games like RPGs that allow you to set your name, but then they don't use it anywhere, or they'll use it in dialogue. But it's like, okay, if you read it in runtime for dialogue, that's fine. Why am I not allowed to change it when you're just gonna read it at runtime again anyway, and it's gonna change? Like, just allow me to change it. I'm aware that I'm changing it, and it might make things a little bit weird, but I don't know. I mean, he's right though. You can fix it with a pop-up, right? That says, okay, now you can change your name, or do you really want to keep your name the same? You know, check if it was changed at all. A confirmation screen, anything.
Now why don't you pick 2 traits? You don't have to pick any if you don't want, but you can pick up to 2. Now let's tag 2 skills. Oh great, now we're done. And at that point when you're done, it can say, okay, all of the things you just did are open to you. You can go back to any of them right now and change them. But going through an order makes it very easy for casual players to learn what's going on and have it explained to them at each stage.
It also just segments the information, right? So you don't get bombarded with a screen of info, you know, like it's some paradox strategy game or something, right? And I think that a good middle ground between these is Fallout 3, and I think that you could also do this in Oblivion 2, and probably I just know those 2 games for sure, which is you would take like your exam where you would set up your character, but then at the end of leaving the vault in Fallout 3 or leaving the sewers in Oblivion, you were given the option to edit it once again if you wanted, if you didn't like your initial loadout. I think that's a really good way to do it. Then players can play around with it.
These are what traits do, and you don't have to pick any. And these are what tagging a skill means, and you get to tag 2 skills right away. Great. But experienced players, based on what we watched people play, they would forget to do some things. And that that pass of going through everything in order would have helped even experienced players not forget to do something.
Agree.
And since at the end it opens up everything anyway, you can just go click, 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 and then do anything you want. You can click through everything in order and then just play with it all day long.
That's why UX is so
I think
important.
that would have worked really well for experienced and casual players. When I mentioned it, I made a reference to the view from a mountain is just as nice if you climb the mountain, or you rock climb your way up the side of the mountain, or you drive up and drive up to the vista and just look. It's the exact same view. So, and the point I was trying to make is the character creator works and makes the same characters whether we make it easier or whether we make it harder. A lot of people like to say, well, the journey is half the experience. And I didn't understand that, because it's like when they put the cart road going up, they probably didn't change the cliff, so you can still rock climb up there if you want to. But this becomes one of those things, people going, well, I wouldn't rock climb if the trail was there. Which the reason I'm bringing this up is I want to draw attention to both points there. One, I think it would be better to redesign the character creator in Fallout because of the psychology of how people used it. Watching people use it, they missed things.
I would say that a really good example, especially if we want to stick within the Fallout universe, is again Fallout 3. What was the exam that you take in the vault? Is it called like the GOAT exam or something? I know it's named after an animal. And if anybody has played Fallout 3, you'll remember it. You get to choose your stats and the initial tagging of skills while you get explained by the teacher what each of those will do and how they might benefit you within the game itself. So they go through each one and they say, well, here's how endurance helps you, right? And it gives you a bit of an intro, or you see the the slide pop up. So I think Fallout 3 is a really good example of how to immersively make a character creator that is not locked in, so you can still change it afterwards, but explains to you what each of the attributes and purposes are for them. So you get a bit of like a tutorial onboarding for how to play a game like this, which is stat based and skill based, without feeling like you're being taken out of the game world or being shown too much information at one time. It's a really, really cool way to do it. Whoever designed that was very smart.
Even experienced people miss things. And casual players were a little daunted by the complexity at the beginning. But then me talking about, hey, just changing it to be easier won't ruin your experience. And some people were like, yes, it will. Isn't that interesting? The character creator is the exact same functionality. But for some people, making it easier changes that experience for them. Psychology.
It's the first experience
That's my
of the
point.
game, too.
Whether you argue whether or not I should have changed the character creator, my point about paying attention to how people think is the important part. It's proven either way. The one I really like talking about, Case 2, is from an MMO I played, and you may have played too. It was a real popular MMO. I'm not going to name names. I named Fallout because I made it. Everybody else can try to figure out what I'm talking about. But there was a really popular MMO that did an experience point penalty if your character didn't sleep 8 hours every 24.
Which MMO is that? An MMO where your character suffers an XP penalty if they don't sleep 8 hours for every 24 hours. Do we ask AI? I don't see if I don't know if I remember if I am familiar with that one. What MMO gives your player an XP penalty if they don't sleep? You think it's Ultima? Could be. That was a very popular one. Aeon. WoW? In its beta phase, it featured an explicit fatigue system where playing too long without resting applied an XP penalty, reducing gains from kills to encourage breaks. This was rebranded as the Rested XP bonus, where logging out in an inn or city builds up a buff. Back in the beta. Could be. I mean, there was also, it showed Aeon. I don't know if Aeon has one too. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
People hated that.
Yeah, I
They
can
hated it.
imagine.
Even though there were inns everywhere,
I bet it is
you could
WoW.
always find beds that you could rent and sleep. Didn't matter. So they changed it. So, hey, you got a bonus if you did sleep. Now, behind the scenes, they just adjusted the XP. So
Yep.
it was the same level as it was before. Meaning, if you didn't sleep and you
Wait, there's no way they did that. Wait, is he implying that behind the scenes they just always give you the 10, let's say 10% penalty, but if you do, you get, wait. No, there's no way they did that,
You
right?
got to in the scenes. They just adjusted the XP, so it was the same level as it was before. Meaning, if you didn't sleep and you got a penalty, now sleeping gave you a bonus. The adjustments were the same. They just moved the XP curve down. So if you didn't have the bonus, you were getting what the penalty was. And
No, dude, there's no way they did that. That's diabolical. If that's what they did. Basically giving everybody the nerf and saying we removed it, but you can get a buff. It made about 10% harder. Dude, there's no way they did that. That's who would make that? Oh, people hate this nerf that you get if you don't sleep long enough. So let's just make the nerf always there and then give you a buff to restore it back to what it used to be. Wow.
the bonus set you back to normal. It was the exact same thing mathematically, but wildly different psychology. And to watch
Yeah.
people argue against those two things was really interesting for me because I was just a player of that game.
Well, it's because it's incentives and disincentives, right? By penalizing the players for something that they forgot to do, it has way worse of an impact on their psychology than if you incentivize them to do something, but say that you're not penalizing them. You know, it's kind of like, this is a weird example, but it just came to my mind, is pay for 3 days early access to a game. You're not paying for early access. You are paying to avoid delayed access to the game. And if they phrased it, imagine if they phrased it as that, by the way, that if you pay us more money, you won't have to suffer the later release date like all the other noobs. Imagine the psychological difference, even though it is fundamentally the exact same thing.
And to watch the game base argue over that change that was identical mathematically but radically different in how it felt was very eye-opening to me because it was interesting to watch what I considered rational people argue about their feelings mattering in a part of the game that was purely numerical.
It reminds me of politics, actually. It's like, guys, you're licking the same flavor of popsicle that Tim here has on his shirt. It's the same flavor. This is not Blue Lagoon. This is the exact same flavor. This is the red and the blue. They are the same flavor, just different colors. So the standard edition is plebs at the back of the line edition, exactly. Dude, you could actually maybe make some funny. Nah, you couldn't come out ahead of that with marketing it like that. It would be funny, but you shouldn't market the game like that. Then there are those of us who wait for sale and take the most late release date at the best price. That's the smartest way to do it.
Which kind of brings me to the third one. This is a case of two games coming out almost at the same time this year. One of them wasn't so well reviewed or received. And one of the complaints people made was that when you were in town, NPCs could block your movement. So if you ran into an NPC, you'd run into them and you'd have to move around them to get around.
Stalker 2. That had to have been Stalker 2. That is one of the games I know, and yeah, it wasn't very well received, and they were NPCs that were bugging and blocking you from getting into places. That has to be Stalker 2.
Okay, that seems to be a valid complaint. Maybe if you run into an NPC, they should step back a little bit, or maybe you should be able to pass through an NPC, just not come to rest in the same spot. Maybe. But another game came out at almost the same time. I think they came out weeks apart. That second game, super well reviewed. People are saying this is gonna be the best game this year. Exact same problem.
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 and Stalker 2. I believe that that's exactly the games that he's talking about. God, I'm such a fucking nerd. When did Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 come out? February 4th? No, it can't be. It had to be something else. He said this year, so it can't be Stalker 2. It has to be something else. I didn't know. I forgot Stalker 2 didn't come out. On a 64, you fucking liar. I wonder what games. But no, I agree with this. I think I've said this before in like just talking with you guys randomly while we're developing, is that people are more willing to overlook a game's flaws if the game itself is good. Take a look at Baldur's Gate 3. Great example. Subjectively, this game has a lot of flaws, especially with its story. And compared to some other RPGs in the same genre, even in the same series, I would say that Baldur's Gate 3 falls a bit flat with its story. But because the rest of the game is so exceptional, people, especially at launch, would demolish you and flame you if you had one small complaint about the third act or something, right? It was such rose-tinted glasses moment of this game is the best game to ever exist. Expedition 33 is another example. That if the game is generally well received, small issues are overlooked. But if the game is slightly poorly received, every single problem is a problem. Starfield was below that line. So the fact that you couldn't knock things, or it wasn't Stalker 2, it was, what was the game came out that you couldn't knock things off of? Off of like ledges and stuff. Two immersive sims, or one that was kind of an immersive sim and one that wasn't an immersive sim. Oh my god, dude, it came out this year. What am I thinking of? Fuck, I can't think of it. Something came out this year where you couldn't knock items off of like tables, and people were comparing that to a game where you could, to like Oblivion. It wasn't Bethesda. What am I thinking of, dude? Oh, it was Avowed. It was Avowed. The fact that in Avowed you couldn't knock things off of tables, people were comparing this to in Oblivion or Skyrim. You could knock things off of tables, and it was because it fell short of this threshold. But I guarantee if the story and the gameplay of Avowed was a bit better or a bit better received, let's say, nobody would give a shit. Nobody would care. It wouldn't even be a topic by anyone. So there is this weird phenomenon where if your game is above a certain line, small issues get ignored. And if the game is below a certain line, every single small issue is now exactly the reason why the game was horrible. It's pretty toxic.
When you were in town, people blocked you and you couldn't get past them. Exactly the same. I was curious. I looked for reviews that mentioned it. I looked for people complaining about that on forums.
I know 100%, by the way, that KCD2 is probably one of the games he's talking about. I don't know the one that was considered bad. Maybe it was Avowed. I really need to know. Yes, it had to have been. It had to have been Avowed and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. 100% Avowed and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. They both had this problem.
Not a single one did. In fact, if you watched my video on foot sliding, you remember I saw the same thing, that when Diablo came out, they had feet sliding all over the place and no one cared. Not a single review back then mentioned it, and nothing on the forums mentioned it. This was the same thing, but in 2025. Nobody cared about NPCs blocking your movement in town in the game they liked, but in the game they didn't like, it was frequently mentioned. Which made me go, if you make a good game, or a game that's well reviewed, I should say, because, by the way, I don't think there's such a thing as a good game. Same way I don't think there's such a thing as a bad game. There's just a good game for you and a bad game for you. And watch my video on bad games if you don't believe me.
I go a little bit further. I say there's no such thing as good or bad design. There's only design that does or doesn't work for the game and for the target audience.
But if a game is reviewing well, many people, including the reviewers, not just players, but the reviewers, will ignore little problems in it. They don't care. They don't even mention it. They don't bring it up and go, yeah, this is a problem, but it doesn't really affect your enjoyment of the game. Make a bad game, and by that, make a game that's not reviewing that well. Oh my God, the same people will complain about all those little things that exist in the good one. And they don't even see the problem. They don't see that as hypocrisy. They don't see that as magical thinking or whatever, because it's completely subjective. The psychology of video games is not the mathematics of video games. People will like what they like and hate what they hate, even if those things reverse on different games that are in the same genre.
Well, I would even go further. If specifically he's talking about Avowed and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I don't think that these games are the same genre. I think Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is way more of an immersive sim versus action RPG for Avowed. Very different games, but because they are both open world RPGs, people compare the two together. But even though I would say that they are completely different genres and appeal to only I won't say minor overlap of um, a minor overlap of players, but it is not a huge overlap. KCD2, they sold NPCs blocking you as a feature. You can't complain about a feature. I don't know what it is with this. I don't like NPCs blocking me either. But it is a weird phenomenon where I think maybe people, I think it's more like searching, right? It's like prodding. It's like, I didn't like this game. Why didn't I like it? And so you take a lot more time to delve into the reasons why you didn't like something and you nitpick versus when you like a game, you talk about all the reasons that you liked it because most of your time was spent enjoying it versus a game where maybe most or a good portion of your time, or let's just say more of your time, was spent not enjoying it compared to this other game that most of your time was spent enjoying it. It is it's a very weird phenomenon, and it still happens. I mean, we just had the new Mafia game release, and people were complaining uh, about the water that you couldn't swim or something, or you had Red Dead Redemption 2 versus Cyberpunk water physics or something like that. And it's like, yeah, but when are you swimming in Cyberpunk? When are you doing this? Like, what is there really to swim for? Not a whole lot. So, who cares? You know, it's just. I don't like the comparison of features in video games because it assumes that all features in any game are supposed to be equivalent when the intentions and the genres and so many different factors affect design. I mean, I talk about quite frequently that for game design, you can have the time of year, the audience, the genre, the competition, other games that might have released around the same time. All of these can influence whether or not your game is well reviewed or not well reviewed. There's so much vagueness and lack of concreteness when you're designing something that you are just taking on pure hope. Coin Pusher Realms are, the game that we're designing now is just, I am thinking that people will like a more minigame centric coin pusher game. It could turn out to be false. It could turn out to be the opposite. I'm only doing it because I think it would be fun and we need to test this and try the gameplay loop. But it's not concrete. I don't have any guarantee that it's going to be enjoyable. I'm not making some. This is a term that I saw being used recently. I don't really like the term, but I'll use it anyway. Friend slop game, which is a very popular genre nowadays. And there are some really good games in the friend slop genre, if you want to call it that. And there are some really bad games in the friend slop genre. If you follow these trends, these norms, you might get a better sense of whether or not players are going to like or not like something, but you can just release something at a bad time or after a certain game has released, and these can influence whether or not your game is received well or not received well. And like Tim says here, and I 100% agree, if it falls above or below that line, people are going to nitpick it. It really, really does happen. To me, this story in Baldur's Gate 3 was kind of a 7 out of 10. But the rest of the game is so good that, and for most people, the nitpicks to some of like the problems with the lack of the Mind Flayer protection ring. It doesn't have any point in the game at all. It has no use. The fact that they tell you that if you start using the worms, it might be really bad for you and you might never come back from it. And all it does is prevent you from using a powerful system that has no downsides. There's no downsides. You can use it. They tell you that you probably shouldn't do it, and it has no impact on the story at all if you don't use it at all. These things are pretty important to me, right? These are kind of a core central aspect of the story, and these are massive plot holes that were left blank. But nobody cares because the rest of the game is really good, and by and large, the game itself is very, very good. So it's like a rose-tinted glasses kind of moment.
Because good games and bad games are subjective, and so are what people like in them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how to give anybody constructive feedback on this. If you're a game designer waiting for me to like lay out, okay, here's exactly how you handle that.
There isn't a way
All
to
I
do
can
it.
say is,
Already
first of all,
guaranteed.
good luck. And second, don't forget psychology when you're designing a game. If you think you can do it all with math, you are going to make mistakes. Try to think about how people approach games, how you can present something so that it would have been disliked if it was a sleep penalty, but somehow loved if it's a sleep bonus. Same thing, presented differently. Voila.
That is
Think
a really
about
good
that when
example,
you're
by
putting
the
your
way.
game together, because I think I see a lot of games make the mistake of presenting something that's perfectly fine and valid in a way that makes players balk at it. And I think we can all do better. I look at some of my old games and I wish I had done better. Anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about.
Really good topic. Really good topic. And, one of those things that for me as a game designer, I love to discuss because there isn't always a right or wrong thing to it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Guys, go give this a like and subscribe. That was wonderful. I have nothing else to add to that. Only that, to me, I don't really have any sort of advice either. I mean, you can do your best work and players can just, I don't know, just not like it. They can just hate your game. They can hate design for the weirdest reasons sometimes, or you might think that they want a feature, but they actually don't want it. Also, please do not recommend Threat Interactive to me ever again. For reasons that should be obvious. Either way, guys, thank you for watching that one. I will catch you on the next one. Take care, YouTube. Peace. Much love. Catch you in the next one.